Appreciate that, and thank you for the accolades on the awards as well. That was a surprise for us, but we're excited about it. So our topic today is how to get started teaching online, and it's an interesting topic because we had to think back in our history. We started back in 1998 with our online classes at TCC, and I still remember it very vividly, but it's 20 years ago, so that's amazing to me that we've been doing this long. With me today, I have a panel of folks that will help me with this presentation. We're going to do a little 20-25 minute max presentation, and then we'll open it up for some questions and answers because we're really wanting to hear from you guys some of your questions and see if we can respond to them as well. If you have a question as we're presenting, like Kyle mentioned earlier, please go ahead and post it in the chat box, and then we'll get to that, like I said, when we get to the question and answer period. So your panelist today is myself. I've been the director of online learning for actually over 20 years now, 21 years to be precise. And 20 years ago is when we actually started the online classes. Back then it was just television courses, what we call telecourses, interactive TV courses, and just the beginning of online learning, which took over everything for us. But the other panelist is Dr. Jennifer Campbell, who's the Associate Professor, Instructional Designer, and she's probably been with our online program just as long as our online program existed, so I'll let her talk a little bit about that later. And then also Travis White, who's an Assistant Professor of Business, although he wears many other hats. He's one of our chairs in the Business Division. And he's going to talk from a faculty perspective about some tips for teaching online. But I wanted to give you just a brief history of TCC and kind of where we've been with our program. We did start in 1998 with our president announcing that he wanted 20 online courses. It's always kind of nice to have a top-down announcement like that he just says, I want 20 by next year, next fall. We want 20 courses online, because then that makes it so much easier to get everybody on board and moving in the same direction. Not all institutions have that blessing, though. So we put 20 courses, actually it was 27. We actually put 27 courses out there in the fall of 1998. And then we started with this course approval process. That's the way we started accepting online courses. So every course had to have its own approval. So we did a request for proposals every semester, full semester, fall and spring. And then faculty would submit a proposal for a course. And so we would only approve that course. We learned quickly that I think it was the fall of 2006, when we had 50 course proposals, that process was just too big for us. And so we decided, well, hey, what if we certify faculty instead? So if we go to a faculty certification model, certify them to teach online or develop online, and then we don't have to worry about approving every course. So that's the model we chose in 2006. We have two parts to that, which Jennifer will go into more detail of. One is certifying the instructor to teach online, and the other is certifying our faculty to develop content or develop courses online. And we've based that certification on the Quality Matters rubric. Then recently, in 2017, we've added to this process of what we're calling ongoing professional development to improve online courses. Because those faculty that went through certification, let's say back in 2006, while they probably have excellent courses today, we realize that we're not doing them a service by just saying, oh, the same thing you did back in 2006 with instructor certification still applies today. Because as we know, this is a moving target. Things change all the time in online learning. And so now we require every 3 years that faculty who are teaching online will go through some significant professional development. And we currently offer 9 options for that. Several are based on Quality Matters, but we also have some of our own, including a new design institute that we're launching this May. So we're excited about that. And again, Jennifer will talk a little bit more about that, so I will turn it over to her. Jennifer, if you're ready.
Yes.
Switch the slide.
Thank you, Andy. So My task is to talk about what we do in our online instructor and online developer certification. And so if you're somebody who runs a online program, this might be helpful information. If you are newer to the to teaching online, and if you're an instructor who is just getting started online, you might consider these types of things that we teach and try to give yourself these experiences or develop these skills. But we do, we offer a 5-week online instructor certification that's geared towards learning about how to use the tools and to manage a class when curriculum is already given to you. So the first decision that we made was to put people in this certification as a student, because we believe that having a student perspective is very important when you teach online, to at least have some experience taking an online class. The second thing that we do is that people start right out with an exercise that they have to show competency with file management and with some of the school's basic technologies. And again, we think that those are really important things, and we like people to identify early if they don't feel that they have these skills, so that they can address these basic fundamental things before they jump into teaching online. We think it's really important for people to know the tools inside and out so that they are managing efficiently, giving students feedback in a way that makes sense for the LMS. And so they're embedded throughout our certification, our practice with all of the major tools. We have people that will ask us, well, I've come from such and such a school. Do I need to take your online instructor certification, or does my experience count? And yes, your experience counts, and we value that. But we do ask people, well, we require people to go through this certification before they teach online, because there are certain things that we do at our school that might be different than what other schools require. And so we've tried to do a grandfather in type process, but it really didn't work well. And what we have found is that people that are really proficient do the workshop in much less time than people who need more experience with developing their skills. We embed throughout the certification recognition of characteristics of effective online instructors, and we try to model many different ways of doing things. Some of it is probably not the best model, but we want people to experience both what it's like to get feedback immediately and to not get feedback immediately. And so that we not only provide information about effective online instruction, but also what not to do. Communication strategies is one of the keys to teaching online, and we model, again, weekly announcements, ongoing email communication, and strategies that we think are most important. We go through the importance of a learning community, and we also do that with a group project, because we want everybody to experience what it's like to be a student who is has to participate in a group project online. And we think that that's a valuable experience so that people can weigh it and decide what's going to be best in their class. And Randy, can you advance the slide? So after people take online instructor certification, they move along to online developer if they decide that they're going to develop curriculum for the college. And so some people will never get online developer. They're teaching under somebody else's stuff and they're very happy with that. And other people decide that they want to be able to develop or modify the content that they've been given. And so they have to do the online developer course. And in this case, it's more individualized. They don't work as a cohort like they do an online instructor. and they basically are developing a course plan. So our major takeaways in this case is that they are familiar with measurable outcomes. We did follow the Quality Matters rubric on many of our things. We use the rubric as one of our texts, but we also work in backwards design and some other things too. So they study alignment with assessments, instructional materials, activities, tools, and how these things align with their outcomes. And they're developing a course plan as they go that they submit to the instructional design team. And each one of the submissions is reviewed and given feedback. There is a whole section in the workshop on how to make digital documents accessible, because everybody knows that that's probably a really good thing to do. And then we have a big emphasis on having people conceptualize and create clear navigation. And so again, the feedback piece is very important to people, and we really make this a priority at our school for making sure that each person's work is reviewed carefully, and that they get feedback that they should be able to generalize to anything that they instruct online. And a lot of the concepts translate to a face-to-face course as well. So once a person's completed our online developer, they have the skills that we think that they need to develop anything, and that is the end of the process. And they, at that point, are certified to develop anything that their school feels that there's a need for them to develop. And now Travis is going to talk more about specific design tips and instructional tips. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Campbell. I'll just reflect very briefly on the, and Randy, if you wouldn't mind going back one slide, reflect briefly on the timeline that Randy mentioned of online learning at TCC. I was actually a student myself in 1998, and 2 decades later, I'm still, or continue to be, a student now working on my doctoral degree. But it's been interesting from a student perspective to see how that's evolved and changed over the years, as I imagine most of you have experienced as well. But I was asked to speak today as a faculty member, and I also, and as Randy mentioned, I have some responsibilities as a lead faculty, as a department chair. So I teach myself, and then I have a number of faculty, about a dozen, that also teach online, and that's a critical part of what we do. And I've done that, I've been teaching almost exclusively online for a little over 5 years at TCC. So developed a number of tips, and this is certainly not an all-inclusive or an exhaustive list, but we think certainly serve as a foundation for folks that are maybe new or newer to teaching online. In that graphic there in the slide before, Randy, I included that intentionally because there's a button that says Teach Online. I think a lot of us, we have a tendency to look for that switch from a number of folks that maybe have taught for a number of years on campus, and we want to switch or a button to Teach Online. And unfortunately, there isn't one. So with that said, I do want to review a number of tips that you would likely find beneficial to teaching online for the first time, or if you don't have a great deal of experience. And I resisted the urge to, or I guess I did there, all caps before the course begins. You really want to have your course content, your structure fully developed. And for a 16-week course, that can be challenging, especially if you're accustomed to teaching in an on-campus environment, where oftentimes you're still refining and putting the touches on a number of things as the semester goes on. And that's not to say that you're locked in completely with your assignments or your material that you develop because you're teaching online, but keeping in mind that you aren't going to see most likely these students every week, once or twice a week, as you do in your on-campus environment. So they're going to be looking at these assignments and the structure, and so changes can be midway through the semester can be pretty difficult. And that'll make grading and communicating with the class much easier. And the next item is instructor presence. And this really sets the tone, just like it would in your on-campus setting in a classroom, really sets the tone for the course, for the students, for the interactions from student to faculty and among students. And sometimes that's as simple as including a picture of yourself. And that lets why you're interested in the subject matter, a little bit about you, and that lets students sort of have a peek into the individual that they likely would have gotten, again, if they were sitting in your classroom. But now that they're in your online environment, it's a little bit different. And something that the last point of this tip is to resist that urge to have a list of rules, or specifically we said ways that a student can fail. That's often comes across that way. And I mentioned at the beginning that I've been a student and continue to be. Oftentimes when we develop our materials, we have a tendency to do just that, to say this needs to be done this way and that way. Make sure that your presence comes across as you want to help students succeed, just as you undoubtedly do. And so the next slide, Randy, thank you. To that end is to have regular announcements. You certainly don't have to do this, but it's highly beneficial to have a communication. This can serve as a trigger to remind students, oh yeah, I'm enrolled in a class online. I need to stay engaged. But it also makes it feel much less like a sort of a canned course. It's tailored to this environment, to you and to these students. And one way that you can do that is by adding contextual comments, or tie a specific subject matter to maybe a current event. And that way they know that you haven't just plug and played the course from one semester to the next. Likewise, having a Q&A forum or a venue or a place within, we've said LMS, and for those of you that are maybe brand new to teaching online, that's our learning management system. So for a lot of you, it's Blackboard, could be Moodle, etc. There's a number of different products out there. But having an area within your LMS that allows students to ask common questions, and then maybe they can provide the answer themselves, or have discussion, or you provide the answer. And another function that we've mentioned is if your LMS allows students to subscribe via email so that they get an alert, the instructor's posted a reply, or someone has posted a reply or a comment in this area. And the next one here is our formative and summative assessments, and a big emphasis on formative. Again, these are not necessarily folks that see you or that you see on a weekly basis, once or twice a week. So it's really important to have those assessments, formative being that take place, obviously, and most of our so probably familiar with assessment, but that take place throughout the semester so that you can sort of ascertain where a student is at in their progression in the course and mastery of the content. And that way they're not taking a summative assessment or a final exam and seeing some of those materials and those questions for the first time. A number of the folks participating today have probably taken a standardized test of some type, whether it's an ACT or GRE or GMAT, etc. And one of the best ways to prepare for an exam like that is that you actually take the practice exam for 3 weeks leading up to the actual exam, so that you're prepared. Now, obviously, this is a little different from a standardized test, but it allows students to be exposed to the types of things that they're going to be assessed on and how they're going to be assessed for that summative assessment at the end. Or however that's done, whether that's modularly by month per semester. And this is a very important, and Dr. Campbell mentioned this, feedback is an integral part of teaching online. Excuse me, it's very easy to feel very alone when you're a student in an online environment, in that you may not be getting the immediacy of feedback that you would get in an on-campus environment. You can see the instructor's facial expressions. You can see the nodding of your colleagues or your classmates in an on-campus environment. You don't have that, so it's really critical to provide that and facilitate that as an instructor, and create a feedback plan. And notice this is not called a grading plan, which is actually the next one we'll get to momentarily, but this is a feedback plan, so that you make sure that you're providing not just scores and not just a grade on an assignment, but feedback. And that feedback can be, hey, I've noticed you didn't complete last week's assignment on time, or that this is the second assignment that you haven't completed, or the opposite. I've noticed that you expressed an interest in this, and you might take the extra time to say, I noticed you've expressed an interest in this assignment that you submitted, or discussion post that you put. Hey, here's a link to something that you can explore. Again, things that you would typically think of in an on-campus environment and probably do intuitively, that maybe needs to go the extra mile to do in an online setting. And grading obviously relates, which is our next tip, very much to the, is a key part of feedback, but not solely. Some folks like to grade different ways. I came up with a generation of folks that bring home a stack of papers when they're in a red pen, and some people like to do that, sort of doing it all at once. Others like to grade smaller amounts. So establish, before the semester begins, before the course begins, how you're going to approach this, and when will that feedback be provided. A pitfall to certainly avoid is providing minimal to no feedback until the very end of the course. Traditionally, I know a number of folks on this call have probably been in that situation, but that's definitely not a best practice. You certainly want to establish how you're going to provide and when you're going to do the grading, and provide those scores and feedback for your participants. I think we're doing good on time, so I'm going to try to go through these last few somewhat briefly. Again, I mentioned earlier and actually, Randy, if you'll go back one more, I'll cover that very, very briefly. Oftentimes, it's really important to, and research suggests, demonstrates significance of the importance of a student-to-student interaction, so that students feel that they are part of a community. They're part of the institutional community, and they're part of a learning community. And how are you going potentially to facilitate that? And if that's, as Dr. Campbell mentioned, she mentioned a group project. Again, years ago when I was a student, that was very prohibitive because of the technological challenges and logistics around that. But a lot of those have been overcome. So how are you going to facilitate a student-to-student interaction in your environment? And we'll go to the last slide, Randy. Thank you. Excuse me. And this is really critical, again, because you have that distance, you don't have your students in front of you, to be able to pick up on cues, whether they're visual, whether they're unwritten or unspoken, but it's a major pitfall to assume learner competence. Whether students know how to learn, oftentimes learning how to learn is a major part, as most of us know, is a major part of their learning experience. So be sure not to necessarily assume that competence, and how you can potentially facilitate helping students to get past some of those challenges that they may have. And lastly, be sure that you have a plan in place to get feedback on learning. Assess learning is certainly you're hopefully assessing measurable learning outcomes, but also the course itself. That's one of the most interesting things that I have the opportunity to do as department chair, is read through the student comments that students have about their learning experience in their courses. And it really is, it's very qualitative, but it's very data rich and insightful for instructors, for myself, and for the department. So I tried to go through those fairly quickly, but those are 10 tips, again, not exhaustive, and you can certainly find a number of others, but that we thought would be very beneficial and critical for folks that are either new or newer to teaching online.
Thanks, Travis. And now we're going to go to our question and answer portion. I noticed some have already posted in the chat. and that's great. We can certainly respond there as well. But want to open it up so that if anyone wants to unmute your microphone and go ahead and ask a question, or even provide some other tips or ideas to the group, that would be great. And I've even got one that I'll hold off here for a little bit that I'll provide, really about starting a program, an online program. Other questions?
Everyone is now unmuted on your mic, so you've got the ability to ask questions through audio. If you'd rather do it in chat, that's okay too. Would you guys mind addressing just for the people that may be watching on Facebook or for the recording, mind addressing the question that we've gotten about the regular announcements in text versus video?
I think Jennifer responded that video is a great tool. Obviously, it can be overused as well as any other tool. I think students do like to see video responses. And I think even now with the generation coming up, a lot of the millennial folks, they love using video to ask questions as well. So it's a cool tool to use. We're exploring that here at Tulsa Community College, giving students the ability to post video discussions and video as a response to an assignment. I see a question here about fully online course, ensure federal credit hour regulation is met. We wrestled with this early on with Tulsa Community College, and how do you displace the amount of classroom time with online time? And what we have found is that you tend to put so much online that the students are actually probably spending more time in an online classroom than they, or doing online work and activities than they would in the regular classroom. So again, it's a balancing act. If you have not gone online yourself, what I recommend, and we recommended this to our first faculty as well, is maybe trying a hybrid class first, or a blended class where you are partially online, and then learn how to use the online environment for certain parts of a course, kind of like doing the flipped classroom. Putting the content online, typically you displace your lecture. So instead of lecturing in the classroom, you're putting that content out there on the online environment, and then you come to the classroom and you do your discussions and your activities. Of course, it requires the student to be very proficient online and being prepared for that class. But at least that's that first step instead of just saying, I'm going to go totally online, everything's online, and which can be intimidating.
And Randy, I will also add, as a faculty member here at TCC, and Dr. Campbell can speak more to this, but part of our online teaching certification is that we had the opportunity to essentially teach a mock classroom to instructional designers, and they took the role of students, and I think that was a great experience. And I don't know if Dr. Campbell, you want to add anything to that, or Randy?
I don't know if we lost Jennifer.
No, I'm thinking.
I didn't even see your video there for a second. So
Yeah, I think your outcomes stay the same as your face-to-face, and you're still covering the same type of content, and you're just considering all the time, how much time will this take? And you're trying your best to just judge what the equivalent of 3 hours in class and 6 hours outside of class. We look for places when we're doing our developer certification, particularly with blended courses, seem to be more popular now, where people are just replacing seat time with homework. And we try to avoid that. We really try to make sure that the online activities are taking advantage of the online tools. So I don't know if that helps or not. I just don't feel like there's a real answer to this question.
And Lynn, I noticed that you added, do you put 1 hour plus videos online per class session? You know, that is certainly a model. I think that you're not trying to emulate what you do in the classroom in the online environment. The online environment has so many rich tools that you don't want to just be stuck with video lecture. But there's certainly a case to be made for having a topic introduction, let's say a 5 or 10 minute video introducing a topic, and then having a lot of different materials, both interactive as well as text, as well as, you know, just other features out there, maybe even discussion, or having the students do different types of assignments, whether it's a blogging or wikis or what have you. And so there's more things you can use in the online environment, to me, that makes it a richer environment than the classroom. So I wouldn't always just say, well, because I lecture in the classroom this 1 hour, then I need to replace that lecture online with a 1 hour video. And I'm not sure that's where you were heading, but that's my reaction.
When people do have 1 hour videos and present them, we will often ask them for the online student to break those up into small chunks with an activity or a discussion question, or even some multiple choice type questions that help students grasp the material in smaller chunks, because we hear over and over again that students just don't watch videos that are longer than about 5 minutes without doing something.
One thing I'll take some time to share, while if y'all want to continue maybe posting in the discussion board any questions. For those of you that are maybe just looking at your institution and trying to put together a program, or looking at developing a program for online, one of the things that we have done at Tulsa Community College is we put together a group of guidelines, and I'll show you our guidelines document and even paste in the discussion board a link to it to share, because that might be useful as you look to what should we do, what should we allow, what's our processes, etc. And so let me do this. I need to switch my sharing to a different screen real quick. Okay, so this is on our TCC website. It's got a long URL. I'm going to copy it here, paste it here. So that's the our guidelines document. It's kind of lengthy. It's a document developed by a committee, our online learning committee, over the years, and obviously adopted, et cetera, with different things changing over time. But it's something to look at as you're putting together a program, maybe documenting some of those things, making sure that everyone is on, quote unquote, the same page, so that all of your different divisions or departments that are offering courses online have some consistency in your processes. Like I said, ours is not perfect, but it's something that we try to keep up and update every year, make sure that we're fairly current. In fact, we recently updated our newest, after faculty development and certification, we have this new ongoing professional development plan for faculty to teach online. So that's kind of a new plan, and it goes into detail with the current options that we offer, which you may be interested in seeing. You know, what kind of things do you do after an instructor has gone through certification or developing a course, and how do they keep current? So I wanted to provide that out there, and then if you have any questions about that, feel free to either email or post them in a discussion. Does anyone else have other tips from other institutions on you know, how to get started teaching online, or what some of their challenges might have been at their institution?
Randy, can a person ask a question?
Sure, go right ahead.
So all of the institutions have faculty requirements and certification. What about the student requirements to enroll in an online class? Because I personally work in many school districts, and there are very few online courses, so they aren't getting the preparation to be enrolled in an online class.
Yeah, we just went through this a few years ago when we were looking at our success rates for online students. Because if you compare your success rates, you know, A, B, C grades, whatever, withdrawals, drops, all that, to your on-campus classes, typically online classes don't look very successful. So we looked at, well, what can we do, especially for those first-time online students? And of course, we tried to identify that population separately. The first time a student comes to our college to take an online class, what are we doing to prepare that student? Prior to that time, we were doing an orientation to our learning management system as well as some tips for them, but we didn't require it. And so that was kind of like a disservice to them. Yes, it's out there if you want to use it, but it's also a disservice to the faculty because then the students come to class, they're unprepared or not prepared to learn. And we've not prepared them to use the system, the learning management system, or give them the, you know, here's what's expected in an online class. And so now, over the past 2 years, we've been requiring students to go through the orientation before they can take an online class. So that's one thing. The other thing that we've done, which the institution did as a whole, and has been very impactful for us, is we don't have late enrollments anymore. It's called on-time enrollment. We don't allow students to join a class after the class starts. And for online classes, that's essentially midnight the day of the class starting. And so students cannot get into an online class the day it starts. That way all the students are prepared, they're ready to start classes. Hopefully they've gone through the orientation and they're ready to go. And so those two things in particular have really helped, I think, with the success, nudge that success rate a little bit forward to getting closer to the on-campus success rate.
We have a question from Facebook from Tracy Edwards. Did you see any drop in enrollment or any untoward responses from your requiring students to do the orientation?
I would say no, not from that. We did see a little bit of drop in enrollments from the on-time orientation or on-time enrollment. The orientation requirement, because the online courses are really popular and our orientation maybe takes 20, 30 minutes max to go through, it hasn't been that big of a barrier for them. But the on-time enrollment has been a little bit of a barrier, but I think the first semester we did that, we saw a drop in all of our enrollments, and not just online, but on campus as well. But then students quickly adopted to that, and I think we're back to pretty good numbers.
Does anyone else have any questions or anything else that they'd like to add as far as practices at your own institutions?
I see a question about the orientation being completed through the LMS. We wanted to do it that way, and we used to actually do our orientation through the learning management system, but we now use a system called Comevo, C-O-M-E-V-O. And the reason we chose that was because our in-person live new student orientation for all of our students was going to use the same system for their online orientation for new students. And so we took that platform and use it. It does track the student all the way through the orientation, including the time they spend on every page. And it does have, if you want to use assessments, and it will even print out a certificate at the end when they complete the orientation.
Randy, looks like there's a couple more questions in the chat.
So the students actually on the orientation, I'll touch base on that. All of our students have to go in through our portal. We use a Luminous portal, part of the what they call Ellucian now. We call it MyTCC. We brand it as MyTCC. So they log into that portal first, and that allows them to have access to both Blackboard and its single sign-on feature that goes to a lot of different products, including our orientation. So once the student logs in, they have a link to the online learning orientation that they can click on, and then they're tracked from there to complete the orientation. As far as the video limit, Jennifer, I'll let you respond to that one.
Let's see. Okay. We recommend that videos as short as possible and broken up. 5 minutes is probably a good guideline. Our videos, we have a license with Kaltura, which is a video streaming software, and they have a built-in application. So that's something that people can use for free, or they can use other open resources and create their videos, and they can either put them on YouTube or they can put them into Kaltura.
Any other questions for our panelists today?
One other comment on videos is we are really pushing that people must have their videos captioned if they're going to put them on the college resources, and not just with the auto caption.
Yeah.
So that is something that people get very excited about, either the free resources or the Kaltura application. But then they have to really step back and start planning and thinking when they realize that they have to caption it as well. And we have people using the auto captioning on YouTube in the editor, and we have people using the auto captioning on Kaltura in the editor.
Great. If anybody has any other, looks like Debbie Myers says, what software to use for captioning? So you said
just the free editors on YouTube and Kaltura. Well, Kaltura is not free, but it comes.
Yeah, Kaltura is the platform that we license at the college, just because it has some unique features for creating videos or uploading videos, and it keeps it pretty private instead of putting it has a built-in auto captioning feature. So it does a pretty fair job. It's probably as good as the one that's out there on YouTube. YouTube has a built-in auto captioning feature as well. But usually you have to go back and edit things, because if you're doing academic language in your video, there's the captioners don't always do a very good job with some of that stuff. And it can get pretty funny, actually.
So while we're waiting to see if anybody else has a question to type in, Randy and your team, if someone thinks of a question later on, or someone watches this from recording later on, is there a best way to contact you with questions?
Sure is. There's my email link, randy.dominguez@tulsacc.edu. Just feel free to shoot me an email, and if I can't respond, I will forward it to one of my colleagues here to get a response for you.
Okay, great. Well, thank you all so much for taking the time to do this great panel. I think that there was some really valuable information here today, and we had some wonderful questions as well. So thanks everybody for being so engaged. And once again, thank you to our award-winning panel for taking the time to share their expertise with us today.
Thanks, Kyle, for hosting us too. Appreciate that.
You bet. Thanks everyone. And we hope to see you at upcoming presentations the next couple of weeks.
All right. Take care.